So there's a group of us that get together every week, and usually we take communion and kind of share with whatever we feel like the Lord is showing us for each other and for us as a corporate, as a church and stuff like that. And this past couple of weeks, there's really been a theme of what it looks like to really be present and living in the moment, looking for the opportunities that heaven seems to bring to your doorstep, and actually being faithful to step into that. When the Lord cracks the door open, you kick it the rest of the way and run through it, you know? And so I had this story come to my mind that happened several years ago that I've always been really careful to tell, to talk about, just because there was people involved that could be Googled, you know? But I feel like it's a good time for it, and also I'm not so worried about the backlash from it anymore, you know. So there's that. But there was this one night when I was young. This is 2000, probably 3 or 4, so 18, 19 years ago, and I was a young buck. But I was living in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I was downtown. And downtown every weekend, a group from the church that I was at would go, and they came across as like secular musicians, but they would just set up and play music on the corner of Trade Street and Tryon Street in downtown Charlotte. Really busy intersection, but had a big commons area. It's a very pretty place. And somehow they got a permit or something to go down there and just play music every week and hang out. And so they would just get into, it looked like probably a bunch of hippies or, who knows, but they're talented musicians. So it was really kind of cool. People would just kind of hang out and walk and hang out and talk around there. There's a Starbucks in the area and stuff like that. And so I was actually there one night. I showed up, and as I was getting there, I saw a couple that was walking across the street over to the crowd to hear the music. And they looked like a very, probably wealthy, distinguished looking couple. He was wearing a suit, kind of had one of those, like, I don't know if it's a pea coat or whatever, those top coats that goes over your suit. And, she was dressed really nice. And so as they were walking by, I just felt like the Lord highlighted them to me for some reason. And I saw the man, and I felt like he was really a distinguished leader. And I heard the word administration come into my mind, as I'm praying, like, do you have something for him? Like, oh, administration. So, okay, that seems pretty general, pretty safe. And then I looked at the woman, and I thought, well, do you have something for her? And instantly I had a picture of her weeping at night in her bed, weeping. But the Lord wanted me to encourage her that she's weeping over one of her children, but that he has that child in the palm of his hand. And so that's an uncomfortable thing to walk up to strangers with, but at the same time, I was pretty gung-ho back in the day, when I was a young buck. So I walked across Tryon Street, they had walked across Trade Street, and I kind of met them to where they were, and I was like, hey, how you guys doing? Just kind of introduced myself, and they're like, it's cool. Do you know these musicians? I was like, yeah, they're some friends of ours, and they set up down here, and they all get together and play music, and usually on the weekends. They're like, oh, okay, yeah, we're here for a conference. We're from out of town, and they were friendly and cordial. And so finally, I was like, well, hey, do you mind if I share something with you? And the guy looked at me like, well, sure. And I was like, well, when you walked across the street, I felt like God really highlighted you to me. And I felt like you really have a gifting in leadership. You're a strong leader and a real gift in administration. And he looks at me, he's like, huh? He's like, okay. He's like, well, I've been a Mormon bishop, which is an elected position in the Mormon church. I've been a Mormon bishop for 5 years. And which I didn't really bat an eye. I was like, oh, cool. So you really are in leadership. And he's like, yes. He's like, yes, I have been in leadership. He's like, I'm the director or the conductor of the Mormon Tabernacle. I have trouble saying that word. The Mormon Tabernacle Choir. There it goes. I got it out. But it's like, I'm the director or the conductor of the Mormon Tabernacle Choir. Okay. It's like my mom butchers words like crazy. Now I've inherited this. I do this for a living, But anyhow, so I was like, yeah, so he tells me he's this big director of this Mormon choir, and I'm like, whoa, dude, like, well, that's a pretty big deal. But I wasn't wrong, And so he's standing there. I was like, well, I actually saw something for your wife as well. Is it okay? Is it okay if I share something with her? I was being polite to him. I'm not going to just roll up on his girl and just start talking to her, And he's like, okay, well, what is it? And I said, well, ma'am, to be honest, when I saw you and I asked the Lord what He had for you, I saw a picture of you laying down at night and crying yourself to sleep. but I felt like the Lord wanted me to encourage you that the child you're crying about, he has them completely taken care of. And when I did, that's when it got real, because she said, that's my daughter. She's like, that's about my daughter. I was like, yeah. And she's like, my daughter has left the Mormon faith and she's become a Christian. And so, now I'm feeling pretty good, you know what I mean? I was feeling pretty confident. At first I was kind of scared to walk up on them. Now I'm feeling like, oh, this is a hitter, you know what I mean? This is one of those days, man. And so I'm standing there and I'm like, oh, really? I was like, okay, well, wow, the Lord, and I didn't push the buttons any worse than that. But, looking back at the story, it's like, hey, you're a Mormon, you're crying about your daughter who's gone over to this cult, which is just Christianity, and she's converted into it. And you have a Christian that comes and tells you like, hey, she's actually in the palm of the Lord's hand, like she's in a good place. And so that'll mess your theology up a little bit. But, anyway, so she's saying this, and then the boss takes back over, the dad, the husband. And he says, well, the way we believe is we have a prophet. There's a prophet of Mormon, which I didn't know these things. Obviously, I'm not from Utah. He's like, but we have a prophet, and we have one prophet. And when he passes away, there will be a successor. There'll be another prophet. And so I said, oh, that's interesting. And I remember, looking back at it, it was like, yeah, we believe in this stuff. We believe in prophecy. We believe in these types of things, which is what I had just demonstrated. But, in your rationale, does that mean that maybe you think you found the successor, the next Mormon prophet? You know what I mean? It's just like, well, there's one, and maybe he's found the next. And but it's silly thinking about it. But it was a war that was going on in his mind. And as soon as he said that, we have one prophet, and when he passes away, we'll have another one that takes his place. I said, oh, well, I'm a Christian, and I believe what it says in 1 Corinthians 14, that you may all prophesy, and that this new covenant we've been given is about the connection, the veil being torn in the curtain of the Holy of Holies was this unseverable connection that we have to enter into a relationship with God. And 1 Corinthians 14:3 says that he who prophesies for edification and exhortation and comfort to people, which is basically what just happened to his wife, you know what I mean, right in front of him, and to him as well. And it comes with this good fruit. And it's like, oh, that's really interesting, because you guys believe the Bible, right? And he's like, yeah, we do. We believe in the Bible. And, so it was just like an interesting night. And we talked for a little while longer, and I invited them to the church I was at, which they didn't show up, that next day, which was fine, but it was one of those nights that I've never forgotten. And, I didn't even have the internet back then. I was kind of late to the game, kind of, with all that. But, I've Googled this guy, I've looked him up since then, and he was the conductor, the director of the Mormon Tabernacle, there that word is again, choir, you know what I mean? And, but he was this, but a few years after we met, he abruptly left that position. I don't know if it had anything to do with his theological beliefs changing, or I have no clue, but I know that it was an awful uproar, and that he left that position and he went to a different position where he was an administrator at a college in Utah, a different one. So I thought it was interesting. And, it's interesting when I've told people this a lot in Christianity, instead of, kind of waiting for your family or your friends to follow the Lord with you to when it's kosher. There's something to going all in with God and seeking first the kingdom with your whole heart that creates a vacuum in your life. And it actually affects your friends and your family more than it would affect them, you sitting back with them waiting for them to actually go in, you going all the way in. And, to think about this young lady who stepped against her parents' beliefs and stepped out of this cult, to this religion. And now, you've got somebody in several states away, me, a regular Christian, just hearing the Lord's voice and actually sowing seeds into her family that she's already starting to, that she probably started that chain reaction by actually seeking first the kingdom herself. And it's a beautiful thing, man. None of us are alone. But the reality is, just like the guy tried to pinhole me into being something that I wasn't. Well, maybe you're special. Maybe you're gifted. And it's like, no, I'm actually a believer. I'm a Christian. And that's been my message for the next 20 years of my life, even to this day. It's like, there is no such thing as Christianity that is not Spirit-filled Christianity. It's just not there. It's not real. And some people are like, well, yes, it is, bro. It's like, no, there's not. And I understand even founding and starting the Hoff these past 9-10 years of wanting to be to create some space, even from the term charismatic, because it comes with so much wishy-washy weirdness and hamburger helper that's not meat, But at the same time, the reality is you cannot separate the walk of the Spirit and being filled with the Spirit from Christianity, because even in the prophetic utterances of the Old Testament talking about what Christianity would be had to do with being filled with the Spirit of God. If you look back, like Ezekiel 36, look 24, 5, 6, but Ezekiel 36 says, I will cleanse you and put my Spirit in you. I'm going to take the heart of stone out of you and I'll put a heart of flesh on the inside of you. It's these prophetic utterances. Isaiah 59 is a good one. Like, this is the new covenant that I've got with them. My words are going to be in your mouth, Isaiah. They're going to be in your descendants' mouth from this time and forever. Like, they're going to be in everybody's. It's never going to stop. This connection's never going to be severed. This veil being torn is going to be irreversible to a relational connection to God, even in all these mystic forms, is going to be restored. And that which was designated only for the prophets or the special people, not even the Mormon prophet, but all the Christian prophets, it's like Joel 2, it will come to pass afterward, right, that I will pour my Spirit upon all flesh. This is the new covenant was being prophesied in Joel. And your sons and your daughters will prophesy. Your old men will dream dreams. Your young men will see visions. It's like this relational connection that you've designated to the prophets is going to happen to everyone who's, Jeremiah 31:33. I do this all day long, because honestly, it doesn't make no sense to me that there's even another version of Christianity that's not Spirit-filled. And then you read the New Testament and it doesn't stop anywhere. Unless you take 1-2 verses out of context, it just doesn't stop and never will. And I understand sometimes, not wanting to veer into the lane of the gifts of the Spirit because you've seen them happen. It's been so often that people take them and they just go super sideways. But instead of throwing the baby out with the bathwater, having like integrity and teaching the scriptural truth and foundation of the Word and of the Bible and having people be empowered will cause, some kid with a long ponytail like me wearing a black hoodie that could, spits when he talks and doesn't even talk good, 20 years later all the time, to walk up on somebody, but with the word of life from heaven. And that Isaiah 51, I've put my words in your mouth that I might plant heaven. And this isn't for me because I'm special, because I'm the first to tell you that I'm not. This is for every single person who has the ability to acknowledge, that Proverbs 3, in all your ways acknowledge the Lord and He directs your paths. It's like, man, there's something to acknowledging God by being in the present moment and noticing those who are around us, right? That it's not like, how am I going to get a big break in ministry or get my name in the lights? It's like, man, it might be a random stranger or somebody that comes into your path that you have the words of life that's going to bring freedom to them. And I don't know what happened to this Mormon guy, you know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, you could probably Wikipedia him just as much as me, you know what I mean? And check him out. Hopefully you don't, but which is why I've never told this story, because of some of those details. And there's a couple more to the story that are pretty even more out there. But the gist of it is, the group that I take communion with, we've had this theme of late and it's been for several years of being in the moment with God and realizing that you're empowered. And also realizing that there are so many opportunities that we probably walk by on a daily basis because our head's not lifted up. And we're not realizing the one whom we are the carriers of, the Spirit of God Himself. And in doing this, we open doors for other people, but even the doors of our own life are opened in sometimes very strange ways by us being faithful in the very moment. And, it's profound things. So anyways, I want to get on here and kind of share that. We have a podcast, Tyler House of Faith. I've stopped doing a lot of videos because that's just taken off so much, and so it's like it's easier to be honest, because I don't like talking to cameras, and we do a message every Sunday, so it's easy just to upload it. So if you have Spotify, or most phones have the Apple Podcasts app on it, or iTunes or Google. All those podcasts. If you type Tyler House of Faith, we're in there. So that's a good resource that we have out there, and we'll probably do some more of these. We're in Tyler, Texas, 1007 East Irwin. It's the real thing, man. You're welcome to come to that. It's every Sunday at 10, and it's a lot of fun. It's really cool. But other than that, I want to get on here and kick that around, and hope it inspires you, because we are all capable of so much, transforming the world every single day. If our head's up and we recognize, if we acknowledge Him, acknowledge the one who's in us in this Christian walk, He wants to make moves.